Light pink. Luiz, vai qualquer segundo agora.
Tá.
Yeah, it starts. 15. Virou.
Bem-vindos à Arte Rio Online, novamente.
Não dá pra ouvir.
Nossa nova plataforma, nossa feira virtual, que acontecerá até domingo, dia 25 de outubro. Aproveite para descobrir novos artistas, comprar obras dos seus artistas favoritos. Agora nós vamos receber 2 convidados ilustres. O Ai Weiwei, que é artista, arquiteto, diretor de cinema, militante político. Como descrever o Ai Weiwei? É uma grande honra tê-lo aqui conosco. Ele vai conversar com o Marcello Dantas, curador, que eles agora estão em Lisboa. Vão organizar uma nova exposição que acontecerá em junho. Hoje eles estão divulgando essa exposição. Vai ser uma exposição gigantesca que vai acontecer lá em Lisboa. E no Brasil eles também fizeram uma exposição em 2018, Ai Weiwei Raízes. Marcello Dantas foi o curador, foi uma das maiores exposições retrospectivas do Ai Weiwei já feitas, foi em São Paulo, no Rio, foi a Buenos Aires. E eu queria agora, passo a bola aqui, muito obrigada, Marcello, por disponibilizar tempo para Arte Rio. Ai Weiwei, thank you so much for finding time for us here in Brazil. You know you're very, very loved here. We are so happy. Yes, we are. You can talk. Pode falar. A gente está te ouvindo.
Tá bom. Bom dia para vocês aí no Brasil. Estamos aqui em Lisboa, eu na beira do Rio Tejo. Aqui vamos mostrar para vocês uma chuva danada em Lisboa, mas nós estamos aqui com Ai Weiwei para conversar um pouco sobre essas transformações que o mundo está passando e sobre o ponto de vista dele. Então, I'm going to turn to English. Weiwei, welcome. It's good to be here in the wet with you, and in a special day. I remember us talking some time ago, and you said to me, the one thing we will feel in the future about our lockdown period is that we will miss it. Do you already miss it?
Well, we are still in middle of it. We used to say, if you cannot see the mountain because you're inside the mountain, now we are still inside it. Globally, the whole situation is still very messy, and nobody can predict when this is going to be over. Europe have their second wave, so who knows when will be the third wave or more. So it's very hard for us to really know how this is going to be end. But one thing is it provides a new possibility for us to look at our society and our relationship with our loved ones, or our work, or even in the largest situation about global political, geopolitical conditions.
How was your lockdown period? I mean, what's the memory you have of it? What did you do?
I had a beautiful time. I was during the lockdown. I was in England, in Cambridge, It's a little town. It's academic town, and a lot of green and flowers, gardening. So it's nobody. Basically, it's like a ghost town. So every day I can walk in the fields. I really, really appreciate that, the privilege because many people don't have it. If you live in Manhattan or in London or Paris, simply you don't have this kind of possibility.
Why did you start to produce several films during the lockdown? You engaged a lot in documentary production. Why did that happen?
Well, the the documentary called Coronation is about Wuhan. So I decided to do it because 17 years ago, 2003, we did the first film about SARS. That is my first documentary I did with my brother about Beijing, and we basically observing what is happening to this mega city when there's a disease. At the same time, the government cover up about the information, and everybody's in panic. And we, of course, nobody can imagine this happens again 7 years later. When it happens in Wuhan, long before they lock down, they already know the disease is transmittable between human to human, but they didn't announce that, and also they manipulated the death toll and they manipulate about infection numbers. So that is crazy, and that made 5 million people escape the Wuhan city and spread the virus all over the world. So we decided to make a film, and we decided to make a kind of historical record about what happened in the city.
I find the film to be fascinating because it's almost like real time. You're watching the story unfold before you. But how did the Chinese government receive your film?
Well, they actually whatever happens in the outside, China doesn't know it, except the Chinese government have their watching dogs, from diplomats or from the secret police. So they do feel this is going to be a very troublesome topic.
Yeah. And besides Coronation, you're doing other films as well, right?
And we have plenty of time at home, so we decide to finish the other two films. One is about Hong Kong's uprising last year. We filmed the whole year for Hong Kong situation. The film also finished. It's ready to be to give to the public to watch. And another film is about the Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh, and that film is also finished.
Still talking about the COVID issue, so that we cover this. There's something interesting that I wanted to share with you. Just recently, they have figured out four different new viruses coming out of the Amazon. Uh, Due to deforestation, they are contacting these new viruses, which is new threat. Do you think this is going to start to be a continuous process as we approach more as we get closer to the wilderness and we
I think human has in general has been for whatever the reason, scientific reason or some other unknown reasons, has made a uh, much more intimate relations with the wilderness. Used to be parallel world. Now it's no longer parallel. The way we treat animals and the way we treat ourselves, such as we eat this kind of meat as a product of a human scientific research. So all those things is very, very suspicious and dangerous. And may eventually, I think, uh, uh, as a will hurt human society. Um, it's it's very clear. A human has been hurting the whole environment, other species, for decades or for past 100 years. So many species has disappeared, but eventually, human society is a suicidal. As a species, you once you dominate other species, that's the end of you.
Now you are in Portugal. What connected you to Portugal? What made you feel a connection to Portugal?
You're the one that put me in connection to Brazil and Portugal. I never can imagine I would have a chance. It was only remain in my dream to have a show in Brazil, but we did have a show, very very big shows, and a lot of audience and a lot of media talk. But that become more natural to come to Portugal because you all speak Portuguese language, and I always want to be the part of the European community. It's very close from Germany and from London. It just take 2 hours fly.
Or 30-hour drive.
Yeah, but I drive to Portugal from Berlin twice in past 2 months, and each time take about 30 hours of drive. It give me opportunity to cross Switzerland or even Czech Republic and Switzerland and France and Spain and Portugal. So it's nice to driving across the European land.
And now we have a big show in Portugal coming up next year.
Yeah, it's now it's crazy. We're gonna do a very big show in Portugal, in a building which have 400 meters long, a very narrow, very special architecture condition, but will contains a lot of work.
Yeah,
Some old ones,
some new
a
ones.
few new ones.
I do see it, yes. And in many ways, you have started establishing plans. You bought a place here. You're now enjoying a little bit of the life in Portugal. But do you want to talk a little bit about the big three, about that project? I mean, that
Yes,
started 2 years ago.
years ago when we start to have a show in Brazil, I told you, I said, to have a show for me, it's like a deep love affair. I cannot just come in. It's not a nightclub. I have to really get to know the people, the land, the artists, the techniques, and the environment. So we went to those forests and we found a huge tree. Me has been fascinated by the nature elements such as the root or tree. So we start to selecting trees from local artists and introduce us to a living tree which is about 34 meters high, but it's already inside is already rotten, but it still have a very small element, still have a life on it. And so we decide to make us a very difficult task. The task is to casting a living standing tree because nobody can move it. It's a 1,000 years old tree. So we start to build the scaffolding and bring Chinese workers who have been working with me, and gradually the tree looks like a pagoda. It's very beautiful. It's like a worship uh, area for in the middle of the forest. So, of course, in those trees, there's millions of beings once attacked our workers, and so that worker immediately been sent to a hospital and there was three snakes, one red one green one, and one black one. And the huge snakes come out, also living under that in this big hole in the tree. So this is very almost like a religious type of act to casting that tree, and many unexpected things happened. So we shipped all the mold back to China to do the iron casting. During the iron casting, uh, you informed me, and the big tree is collapsed under some kind of thunderstorm or something. So that tree is almost like a last tree symbolically for the Amazon there, because that tree is so tall, it's above other trees. You still can see on the top of the forest that tree stick out, but now completely collapsed. But that is during the time when the new government come, and they're not going to protect those environment. They are somehow encouraging the development, and a lot of tragic happens.
It's true. Democracy is failing, or we have to renounce our social activism to protect it.
I think so-called democracy is being hijacked by the politicians and by special interest group, like huge companies, and basically it's hijacked. Yeah. The so-called
Rapture.
democracy, yeah. If so-called democracy is not going to be there if the individual is not act, because democracy, the main, the core meaning of it is individuals' value being presented and the argument being presented in the political process. But for too long, I think we only have the fake democracy, and which tells you the people, okay, you have democracy, you have freedom, but that's not true. The real democracy and freedom come from a fight.
In talking about fights, you just made a protest, a silent protest for Julian Assange. Why did you make it, and what's the story behind it?
Julian Assange's case is the most important case in 21st century. Even nobody really understand or care about it. The media doesn't really talk about it. The mainstream are trying to not to pay attention to the information, but that is a citizen who really trying to give the value back to democracy. That means you have individuals questioning the power, the deep power, and the deep state, and trying to reveal the secret to the public. So it's take the personal risk to give all the secret to the public, not like many media icons. They gave the personal secret to the state or to the companies. So Julian did just the opposite. Then he becomes the enemy of the most powerful state, United States. He has been indicted, or not indicted, but extradited, then he will be sentenced 175 years. And with such a crime, and I see very little attention paid by mainstream media. So I think this is very important for me to support freedom of uh, freedom of information, freedom of expression, and the individual rights. So that's why I support him
Yeah. And you made a protest
in
in
London,
London
in
recently.
front of
Yeah.
the
We're just 2 weeks
court.
away from the U.S. election. What is your opinion of this election, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, and what's in the stake?
I think the election become like a big joke. I see the debates. This is not a one meaning sentence or even vocabulary can be remembered. It become a very low type of street argument, and it's so boring and so horrible. And you can see the Republicans and the Democrats, they are same. They're, people think they are so different. They cry and argue about the other side is like evil, but basically the same. There are politicians which protect the big companies, big financial giants, and they are not really reflects the real meaning of a democratic society.
Uh, you've been named this year the world's most popular artist. And
Really?
really, yes,
Okay.
by the art newspaper.
Huh. Okay.
and nowadays everything's going to change. I mean, the whole museum world, the exhibitions world, they're all going to change. And how do you see this change will take place in relation to major events, major concentrations of people, the whole flow, the whole business of the art world as has changed its scale dramatically.
We have to understand that the world is a moment of change, and that change is going to be big. It's not only financially, politically, and it's going to be a huge change in the culture sector, related to museums, art shows, art exhibitions, and the art fairs. So this change definitely would reflect about our time and our new crisis and how we are going to dealing with that crisis. The old so-called good old time is over.
It's true. And I'm interested in one aspect of your work that I find to be fascinating, which is your archaeological process of retrieving old techniques, old craftsmen, old materials, and reviving them with contemporary meanings. And this has been a mark that you've gone throughout, and you're doing that in Portugal as well. I mean, how do you relate to this process of bringing back things to life from past memories, from collective process and collective memories that have been lost in many places and are in danger in many places in the world?
In past 100 years after the Industrial Revolution, and we trying to think the new is better, or or the art is about the new, which is not. I think is in general is a hype. And as a human being, yes, there's a lot of new development, but we are still individuals. We live passing through a few decades and we die, and another generation will continue their journey. So everything we learn will be buried if we don't give it to the next generation. And so do if we don't learn from the past, we are just barehanded. We don't know anything about the humanity and the human society. That's why we have to pay very special attention about history, about what has been done.
Uh, Social media has been in the focus lately, and algorithms and the power of manipulating people and information and all. You are one of the artists with the biggest presence in social media in the world. How do you, there you go. How do you relate to the concentration of power and manipulation associated with social media? How do you
I think if you look at the coronavirus condition, um, we see the most benefited social media either benefits society or society. The real situation benefits the social media development is the quick response to the information, and of course there's always fake information, but still, uh, you know, we can daily, hourly to say what is happening and how it's happening and what is intellectual or rational analyze about the situation. So I think it totally changed the political landscape. You see president would tweet every hour. You see scientists would give a talk. You see we have this kind of social media, online discussions, so often. Like I do it daily, and so the communication is not getting less by isolation, or but still, when people are isolated, they're more eager to find out what happens next door or what happens in other side of the global situation. But one factor need to be more clear is a state become much more powerful with the social media, and to use the data and the information in control, and and the surveillance of the individuals, behaving, like who you talk to, and where you when you get to sleep with whom, and what you're shopping, and and what kind of medicine you're taking. All those habits clearly reflects in the social media account. But most likely, like in China, they have this so-called private individual health card. You have to use that card to get on bus or to go to anywhere. Even you go to work, they have a facial identification camera. You have to, then they would give you a pass. So state has built a most sophisticated, like shuttle-like technology, and to in control individuals' behaving, and also individuals' mind. So this will become a much look like much like a scientific futuristic film, but it's a reality.
Did you hear about the Chinese method of tracking people by the way they walk,
Yeah,
by the body language
they
of their walk?
they even control the pig farm, to have facial identification camera can tell which pig from which family, and
Which means
the pig, the face
oh,
of
the
the
pig,
yeah, the pig.
the pig.
Yeah, 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 pig or lamb.
Yeah.
So when you can see how fine that the technology has
That's
been
become. Yeah.
become.
Um, what's your relationship with animals? What's your passion with animals?
I am an animal, and I'm a trained animal, but not very well trained. I never really finished my school, but I do feel, uh, as a human, I feel shamed and pity because we did too many bad things or horrible things to other animals.
And but I see you have a love and a care for animals in a way that is quite special to
It come too late because when we growing up, we only see animals as a food, or supplement or humans to survive. We ignore their feeling. We ignore their, you know, we totally ignore uh, other life dignity. So that is really a tragic of a human being. It's tragic to animals, but more tragic to poisoning to human mind.
what is your image of historically now, historical perspective of Mao Zedong?
Well, he's a very learned man, and he's have a very strong knowledge and common sense, you know. But he is not a modern mind. That means he's still very limited by his condition, China at that time, and also the problems with China at that time. So he is deeply marked by his time.
Yeah. And in a way, Mao meant a lot to your family and to yourself, but you already have judged him historically, even though he impacted your life, your father's life.
Yeah, he's like a king, and he's quite convincing at the beginning because it takes the whole nation to follow him to make this so-called new nation. But immediately they realize he can be very brutal as a king. He can be very cold, very inhuman.
Yeah. Is there a system in the world that you admire? Is there a system in time that you see that has made people more happy or more?
And that system is not. We still have to build that system because system means it's like a machine. Sometimes it functions, sometimes when the condition changed, it always had some kind of problem. So always need to be fixed.
Yeah. Do you think your work ages with the causes you raised, or do you think they become historical evidences of our time? You make a lot of work that is contextualized by the present. When you do with the refugees, when you do with Assange, when you do in different process.
I love the time when I'm conscious and have some emotional feelings or concept about because I cannot live in other time. This is the only time given to me and by God. So I really treasures the time and trying to respond and to give reflections to those times. So as an artist, I use artworks to reflect those situations.
I'm really fascinated by your interest in the fantasy or mythical or spiritual aspect of your of Chinese culture and of the world in general. I mean, does this connect to your past as a child, or is this something that you've learned later on in life? How do you connect with these stories, with these narratives, the mythical narratives of the world that you now also represent, the zodiacs, the figures, the symbolic figures that you bring alive?
I think as an individual, your experience are very limited. So you try to think in what the people like you in the past, what's in their mind. Very often you're fascinated by human has great mind for imagination and for their fear and for their some kind of dream, and they trying to interpret the world in many different angles and different ways, and that give a much more uh, colorful and actually reliable understanding, not just about the outside of the world, but also about ourselves.
Do you enjoy making more films, activism, or artworks?
For me, they all as one. It's about my curiosity, and it's about my learning process, and you know, I have to use those things and to help me, just like a mountain climber or cliff climber needs certain tools to really to guide on on, on certain height.
It's true. Um, we are talking about new challenges in the world today. One of the biggest ones is artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence poses a real, not I wouldn't say threat, but a challenge for the human race when we have an intelligence that might be better than ours. And are you interested in mind enhancement of humanity, of how to develop a better human mind?
I am not. I think the only meaning about a better human mind, that means even more evil or devastating. Human mind is very uh, limited, given condition by the nature or by the super power, a power above us. So we cannot even understand what we have, and we don't only can understand very percentage of what we have. Could be very small, just maybe just like a spoon of water of the ocean, So we think we know, but we don't and the eager and the kind of crazy thinking about artificial intelligence and still come from our humans intelligence. If artificial intelligence can live without human, then I think and also it can really functioning without humans intelligence or logic, then then that would be something very unique. But still, we don't say that. We still say all the intelligence we have to interpret it, and it still functions for us. So that is not a really human intelligence or scientific intelligence. It's only about the human stupidity of lacking of understanding of our capacity.
Do you believe in justice?
I believe in justice, but I believe that justice may never really achieve, because as a human or as an animal, when Darwin, already have this kind of theory, only the one who survives because it's how do you call it? Because it's a winner, because it's a predator,
Mm-hmm.
and under that kind of law of nature, human are not civilized enough, or may never become civilized to really achieve so-called social justice. But normally we talk about social justice is about a very small area, about the fairness in the families or in the social groups.
Yeah. Wait. What is your dark side?
My dark side is my bright side.
Your dark side is your bright side.
Yes,
And what is your bright side?
I have no bright side.
Very good. And yeah, in a way, we've covered a lot of ground, and
Yeah.
I can see that. Tell me two things that I would love you to talk about, which is this: what have you learned in the process of dealing with local cultures that are not yours, and then you get in touch with it, and then you connect with the craftsmen, you connect with the culture, with the materials, with the nature. What of this process has remained in you? I mean, have you learned something from it? Have you absorbed something from it?
The more I try to communicate with other different people, different culture, the more I understand that we are all the same.
It's true. I've seen you being with people that do not speak any common language with you, and you can really speak with your hands and with your mind to them by connecting through materials. This is something very Eastern, of the East, that people communicate through things more than through words.
Well, funny enough, even long before we are so-called developed or civilized, and the human species in all races they can make love. You know,
Hmm.
there's no difficulties or no boundaries,
Yeah,
and that tells everything.
yeah. Interspecies love. It's quite interesting. There is a new film about an octopus and a man becoming friends, and they can really engage themselves into some sort of friendship that is really recognizable. Interspecies love may be the next challenge for our race. And well, this is a little bit of it.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, Brazil thanks you so much for the time that you've connected with us. And é isso, gente. Muito
Thank
obrigado.
you.
Thank you. Foi papo
Bye bye.
por aqui.
Bye bye.
Tchau, tchau, Maria Luz. Estamos terminando.
Ah, aqui. Estão me ouvindo?
Estamos ouvindo sim.
Ah, que ótimo. Thank you so much, Ai Weiwei. I have a question.
Você tem
Can
uma
I
pergunta?
make it?
Okay, sure. She has a
Very
question,
quick.
Weiwei. She has a question for you.
Very quick, very quick. You as very politically engaged and activist, do you think artists have the responsibility of being politically engaged? Do you think artists have a responsibility to help to change the world to a better place?
I think there's only two kind of artists. Artist who is human and artist who is inhuman. Artist is human who cares about the political situation because he is going to be victimized by the situation, or he's going to be defending those very essential rights, such as freedom of speech and freedom of expression. And those are core values of self-expression. And without defending those issues, then you cannot be artist of human.
You cannot be artist of human.
Artist of human. Thank you so much. It was very it follows this. It's very inspiring. To have you here, you know, we are very fond of your work here, and we always like to welcome here in Brazil. Thank you so much. and
Tá bom.
We hope to have you soon here. Thank you so much.
Ok. Beijo. Tchau.
Bye.